A man in a black apron is stacking dirty plates at a chop house on the California coast, and the night manager who just snapped at him for moving too slow has no idea that the busboy owns the building, the kitchen, and the chair that manager is leaning back in. Nobody knows. Not the servers. Not the line cooks. Not the woman smiling at the host stand. The man clearing plates wanted it that way. He had asked for the worst section, the late shift, the apron nobody else wanted. He gave a first name and nothing else. He kept his eyes down and his hands busy. And for 3 nights he watched. What he saw was not a slow restaurant or a tired staff. What he saw was a thief. Every night, after the last table cleared and the doors locked, a small ritual happened in a back office. Cash counted. Numbers changed. Tips that belonged to teenagers and single mothers quietly walked out the door in a manager's coat pocket. The man in the apron stood in the dish pit, watching the light under that office door, and he made one decision. He was going to find out exactly how much had been taken. And then he was going to give it back. 10 days later, the whole staff would be standing in that dining room, and not one of them would be able to speak. There is a chop house in Santa Barbara, California, called Holloway's, and it sits on a stretch of waterfront where the rent alone could buy a house in most of the country. It is not a loud place. It is the kind of place that whispers. Dark walnut paneling, brass fixtures rubbed soft over 40 years, a bar with a single row of crystal glasses that catch the light from the harbor across the road. The dining room seats 90. The menu opens at $120 a person, and that is before anyone has touched the wine list, which begins where most dinners end. People come here to celebrate the things that matter: anniversaries, promotions, the last good night before a hard surgery. The staff at Holloway's learn very quickly that they are not serving food. They are holding the most important evenings of a stranger's life, and they are expected to hold them gently. The people who work here are not wealthy. The servers are. But the bussers, the runners, the dishwashers, the young ones in black aprons who never speak to a table, they are the ones who make the whole machine move, and they make it move on tips pooled and split at the end of the night. A good night could mean $200 in a teenager's pocket. Across a month, it could mean rent. It could mean a textbook. It could mean a little sister gets to stay in her own bed instead of a cousin's couch. So when a new busser showed up on a Tuesday in early spring, quiet, older than the rest, gray at the temples, hands that did not look like they had bussed many tables, nobody thought much of it. He said his name was John. He said he had worked restaurants before, years ago, and needed something steady for a while. He tied his apron without complaint. He took the section by the kitchen doors, the one with the worst tips and the longest walk. He drove an old motorcycle and parked it 3 blocks away. He wore the same gray hoodie 2 nights running. He never mentioned what he had done before, and nobody asked. The man clearing plates was Keanu Reeves, and 8 months earlier, through a quiet investment fund that bore none of his names, he had become the majority owner of Holloway's. He had never set foot inside until that Tuesday. The night manager was a man named Russell Tate, and to understand the story you have to understand Russell, because Russell is not a cartoon. He is the kind of man you have met. He may be the kind of man you have worked for. At 53, Russell Tate looked exactly like a man who had earned his place. Pressed shirt every night. Cufflinks that were not expensive, but were always straight. Shoes shined to a hard gloss. He knew the regulars by name. He knew which table the senator liked and which corner the actress preferred. He could calm an angry guest with a sentence and a free dessert. And he could make a nervous server feel, for one moment, like the most capable person in the building. He had run Holloway's floor for 19 years. He told himself, and anyone who would listen, that the place would fall apart without him. But Russell Tate had not started in a place like Holloway's. He had started in Bakersfield, in a house with a window unit that worked 4 months a year, and a father who came home from the packing plant smelling like cold meat and disinfectant. His father, Earl Tate, had worked that plant for 31 years. 31 years of frozen fingers, and a bad back, and a foreman who called him by the wrong name on purpose. Earl had believed in the pension. He had talked about it at dinner the way other men talked about heaven. And when the company restructured the year before Earl was supposed to retire, the pension was reclassified, reduced, and finally gone. And the men in suits who did it never once raised their voices. They did it politely. They did it with paperwork. And Russell, 19 years old and watching his father read a letter at the kitchen table, learned something that would shape the rest of his life. The people at the top always take. They take quietly, and they take legally, and they smile while they do it. And the only fool in the room is the man who works hard and trusts the system to be fair to him. Russell swore that year that he would never be his father. He would never be the man at the bottom holding an empty envelope. He clawed his way up through diners and steakhouses, and finally to Holloway's. And somewhere along the way, the lesson curdled inside him. If the system was a thing that took from the people below to feed the people above, then Russell had simply decided which side of that he was going to stand on. It started small. A skim off the cash tips on a busy Saturday. A few dollars here. A rounding error there. He told himself it was a correction. He told himself the owners, faceless, far away, richer than God, were skimming far more than he ever could. So what was the difference? He told himself the kids would never miss what they never knew they had. Then, it stopped being small. By the spring Keanu walked in, Russell Tate was taking close to $900 a week out of the tip pool. He kept a second ledger. He altered the tip-out sheet before it went into the safe. He had a system. And the system had been running, untouched and unnoticed, for almost 3 years. And the people it took from were the people who could least afford to lose $1. The busboy named John worked his 3rd shift on a Friday, the busiest night of the week, and that was the night he understood it was not a mistake. He had partnered, by the schedule, with a kid named Marcus Bell. Marcus was 19. He was tall and too thin, and he moved through the dining room like he was apologizing for the space he took up. He had a way of catching a wobbling water glass before it fell that no one ever noticed, because nothing ever fell. He worked harder than anyone on the floor, and he never once complained. Over the bus tubs and the steam of the dish pit, Marcus talked, the way young people will talk to a quiet older man who actually listens. He told John about his little sister, Tasha, 12 years old. He told him their mother had been in and out of the hospital since the fall, and that the bills had a way of arriving faster than anything could be paid. He told him he was busing 6 nights a week and saving every dollar he could, because he wanted to go to nursing school, and because someone in the family had to be the steady one now. Then he said something that made John stop moving. "Numbers have been weird lately," Marcus said, not really complaining, just thinking out loud. "My tip-out's been light, like a lot light. I figured I was counting wrong. I'm not great with the math part." Russell says it's just slow nights. He shrugged, embarrassed to even mention it. Probably me. It was not slow nights. Friday at Holloway's was never slow. John said nothing. He carried his tubs to the back. And at the end of that night, when the floor was empty and the chairs were up, he found a reason to be near the office. He saw Russell at the desk. He saw the cash drawer open. He saw 2 sheets of paper, not one. He saw a man fold bills into the inside pocket of a sport coat with the casual ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. He saw Marcus, on his way out the back door, count $38 in his palm and tuck it into his shoe so he would not lose it. $38. On a Friday, at a place where one couple's dinner cost more than that kid would make all week. The man in the gray hoodie walked the 3 blocks to his motorcycle in the dark. He did not call a lawyer. He did not call the police. He stood there a long time with his helmet in his hands. Then he made one phone call. It lasted less than 2 minutes. And he went home. The escalation did not look like an escalation. That was the point. For the next week, John kept showing up. He bussed his tables. He learned the rhythm of Russell's nights, when the skim happened, where the second ledger lived, which numbers got changed and how. He was patient in a way that would have unsettled Russell if Russell had been the kind of man who noticed busboys, and quietly, through that nameless fund, he had asked for the books. All of them. 3 years of payroll, tip declarations, cash deposits, every number Holloway's had ever reported. An accountant, a calm woman named Priya who had worked with him before and asked no questions she did not need answered, laid it all out across 2 long weeks. The picture that came back was ugly and precise. $126,000. That was the figure, give or take, that had disappeared from the tip pool over 34 months. Spread across 11 bussers, runners, and dishwashers. Most of them under 25. Several of them, like Marcus, holding up entire families on what was left. $126,000, taken $38 at a time from people who tucked their pay into their shoes. Now, here is where the story could have ended the easy way. A man with that much money and that much proof does not need grace. He could have walked in with 2 officers and a press release. He could have made an example. Most men would have. Most men would have called it justice. But the busboy named John had spent 10 nights on that floor. He had watched Russell Tate calm a grieving widow at table 9 with a tenderness that could not be faked. He had watched him cover a young server's mistake without a word, and then teach her, gently, how not to make it again. He had seen a man who was good at the surface of his job and rotted somewhere underneath it, and he had learned a long time ago that those 2 things can live in the same person. So, he did not bring the police. He waited until the last table cleared on a Thursday. He waited until the floor emptied and the kitchen went dark and the light came on under the office door. Then he took off his apron, folded it once, and set it on the bus station. And he knocked. Russell did not look up right away. "We're closed, John. Whatever it is, it can wait till tomorrow." "It can't," the busboy said, and something in the voice was different enough that Russell finally raised his eyes. The man standing in the doorway was the same quiet busser who had worked the kitchen section all week. The gray hoodie, the motorcycle boots. But he was not standing like a busboy anymore, and the office suddenly felt very small. "Sit down a second," the man said. "Not unkind. I'm not here to ruin your night." Russell laughed, but it came out thin. "Excuse me?" The man stepped in. He pulled the second chair around and sat, close, the way you sit with someone instead of across from them. "My name is Keanu," he said. "I own this restaurant. I have for about 8 months. You've never met me, because I didn't want you to." The room went very still. Russell's face did 3 things in 2 seconds. Confusion, then disbelief, then, and this is the one that mattered, a kind of cold, falling recognition. The look of a man who feels the floor tilt under a life he thought was nailed down. I've seen the books, Keanu said quietly. All of them. I've seen the second sheet. I know what 900 a week looks like over 34 months. I know it's $126,000. And I know where it came from. Russell opened his mouth, closed it. The polished, capable man who could calm any table in the building had nothing. I'm not going to yell at you, Keanu said. I want to understand it. So tell me. The real version, not the dress code, not the slow nights. The real one. And Russell Tate, 53 years old, sat in his own office and told a stranger the truth for the first time in years. He told him about Bakersfield, about the window unit and the cold meat smell, about a man named Earl who believed in a pension that men in suits made disappear with a polite letter and a straight face. I watched my father break, Russell said, and his voice had gone somewhere far away. 31 years. And they took it like it was nothing, like he was nothing. He looked at his own hands. I told myself I'd never be him, never be the one holding the empty envelope. And somewhere in there I decided, if everybody at the top is taking, I'm just going to take my share. That's all. My share. The owners are bleeding this place for millions and nobody calls that stealing. I take a few hundred, and I'm a criminal. The owners, Keanu said gently. That's me. I bought it 8 months ago. I've taken nothing out of it. Not a dollar. Russell flinched. And the people you took it from, Keanu went on, still quiet, aren't the men in suits, Russell. They're 19 years old. One of them tucks his pay in his shoe so he doesn't lose it on the walk home. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Keanu did the thing that, in every story like this, separates the men who heal something from the men who only break it. He told the truth about himself. I know what it is to decide the world is just going to take from you, he said. I've lost people. People I loved more than I knew how to say. There were years I was so sure that whatever I built, something would come along and tear it down, that I almost stopped building. I almost decided the only smart thing was to take what I could and protect myself and trust nobody. He paused. It's a cold way to live, I know, because I lived in it for a while. And it doesn't actually keep you safe. It just keeps you alone. Russell's jaw was tight. His eyes were wet, and he was furious at them for it. That kid Marcus, Keanu said. His mother's sick. His sister's 12. He's bussing 6 nights a week to keep them above water and trying to save for nursing school on top of it. Last Friday, he made $38. You know what he should have made. Keanu let it sit. How do you think he feels, Russell, doing the math in his head, deciding he must just be bad at counting? Russell Tate closed his eyes. It was a long time before he opened them. What do you want me to do? He said. Not a challenge. A surrender. I'm not asking you to kneel, Keanu said. I'm not even asking you to be punished. That part's not really mine to want. I'm asking you to make it right. Every dollar goes back. To every person. And they hear it from you. Not from a lawyer. From you. He stood. You spent your whole life so afraid of being the man with the empty envelope, he said at the door, that you turned around and handed empty envelopes to a bunch of kids. You can keep being that. Or you can walk out there tomorrow and be the only thing your father ever actually wanted you to be. An honest man. He left. The staff meeting was called for 4 o'clock the next afternoon, before service. Everyone was there. The servers leaning against the bar, the line cooks in from the kitchen. The bussers and runners clustered near the back, Marcus among them, wondering, like the rest, why they had all been called in early. The man who walked to the front of the room was wearing the same gray hoodie, the same motorcycle boots. Half of them recognized him as the new busboy, John, and could not understand why he was standing where the boss stands. The other half had started, in the last 24 hours, to recognize a face they had seen in 100 movies and could not believe what their own eyes were telling them. He did not give a speech. He said his real name, once, and that he owned the place, and that he had spent the last week as a busser because he wanted to see the truth of how it ran. Then he said there was someone who needed to talk to them, and he stepped aside. Russell Tate came forward. He looked like a different man, not weaker, smaller, maybe, in the way a man looks smaller when he has finally set something down that he had been carrying too long. His hands were not entirely steady. He had not shined his shoes. "I owe all of you an apology," he said, "and an explanation, and the explanation doesn't make the apology any smaller." The room was dead quiet. "For almost 3 years," he said, "I've been taking money out of the tip pool. Your money, cash, off the top, before it was ever split. I changed the sheets so you wouldn't see it." He made himself look at them. He made himself look at Marcus. "It comes to $126,000, and every cent of it is going back to you. I have the numbers for each of you. You'll have it by the end of the month." Nobody moved. A young server had her hand over her mouth. A line cook was staring at the floor. "I'm not going to stand here and tell you why," Russell said, "because there's no why that earns this back. I just want you to know it wasn't you. You did everything right. The math was never wrong." His voice finally cracked on the last word, and he did not try to hide it. "I'm sorry. I am so deeply sorry." It was Marcus who broke the silence. Not with anger. The kid took a breath, and his eyes were wet, and he was pretending hard that they were not, and he said the only thing in his heart. "I thought I was just bad at counting," he said quietly. "I told my sister we'd be okay. I really thought it was me." And something in that room came apart and put itself back together at the same time. Keanu stepped forward then, and he put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, and he looked at the whole room. "It was never you," he said. "It was never any of you. He paid every dollar that was owed before the month was out, and he did not take it out of Russell's repayment to do it. He covered the staff in full, immediately, and let Russell pay the restaurant back on his own slower schedule. Marcus got a check that, for the first time in a year, made his shoulders come down from around his ears. Then, Keanu left, the way he had come. 3 blocks to a motorcycle, helmet in his hands, the harbor lights coming on across the road. Gone before anyone could thank him. Real grace never waits around for the thank you. But here is the part the easy version of this story never tells you. Because change is not a check that clears. Change is slow, and it is ugly before it is anything else. Russell Tate did not get to keep his job. Keanu did not press charges. He made that choice quietly, and he never explained it to anyone. But a man does not steal from children for 3 years and stay the manager. Russell understood that. He did not argue. What he did was harder. He paid the restaurant back, every dollar, on a payment plan that 8 years. He sold the cufflinks. He sold the car he had bought to prove he was not from Bakersfield anymore, and he bought something old and reliable, and he found that he did not miss the other one as much as he had thought he would. For a while it got worse. Word travels in a restaurant town. There were months he could not get hired. Months he sat in a small kitchen in a small apartment in the dark, certain his life was over. Certain he had become the very thing he spent his whole life running from, the man holding the empty envelope. It was his sister, of all people, who said the thing he needed. "You always thought the worst thing in the world was being like Dad," she told him on the phone. "Russ, Dad never took a dime that wasn't his. Dad was the honest one. You weren't running from Dad. You were running from the men who hurt him, and somewhere you turned into one." She let that land. Running was easy. Being honest now, that's the hard one. So do the hard one. He did the hard one. A year and a half later, Russell Tate took a job. A real, humble one. Coordinating staff at a community kitchen 2 towns over. The kind of place that feeds people who tuck their last dollar into their shoes. He was good at it. He knew, better than almost anyone, what it costs a person to be taken from. He started a small program there, quietly, that helped restaurant workers in the county understand their pay, read their tip-outs, know exactly what they were owed and how to check it. He never named it after himself. He called it Earl's Table, after his father. The last time anyone from Holloway saw him, he was loading boxes of produce into the back of his old reliable car, and he looked, for the first time in 30 years, like a man at peace with what was in his own pockets. And Marcus Bell finished his savings that year and started nursing school the next fall. He kept busing on weekends to get through it, then kept working at Holloway's part-time even after he didn't need to, because Keanu had quietly set up a fund for the staff. Real wages, transparent tips, a scholarship line for any worker who wanted to go to school. Marcus was the first to use it. He was not the last. His mother got better. Slowly, the way real things get better. His sister Tasha never had to sleep on a cousin's couch. And 4 years after a quiet man in a gray hoodie watched him tuck $38 into his shoe, Marcus Bell finished his degree. And on the day he passed his licensing exam, the first text he sent was to a number he had been given on his last shift as a busser, with a note that just said, "Call me if you ever need anything." The text said, "I did it. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." The reply came back in less than a minute. It said, "I never had to look hard." See you around, Marcus. I've told a lot of stories on this channel, but this is one I keep coming back to, and I think I finally understand why. It would be easy to make this a story about a thief getting caught. It's not. Really, the thing I can't stop thinking about is that Russell Tate didn't start out wanting to hurt anybody. He started out as a 19-year-old kid, watching his father get robbed in broad daylight by men who never raised their voices. And he made a decision in that kitchen that a lot of us have quietly made, in smaller ways, when the world takes something from us. He decided that the only way not to be the victim was to stop being the honest one. I don't know that I would have done any better in his shoes. I'd like to think I would have. But I'm not sure. Most of us aren't sure. The line between the person who gets hurt and the person who starts hurting others is a lot thinner than we like to admit. And the thing that keeps us on the right side of it is usually just that somebody at some point saw us clearly and gave us a way back. That's the part that gets me. Not that the manager got caught, that somebody chose to give him a door instead of just a wall. And maybe that's the point. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known reputation for quiet kindness and for treating the people the world overlooks as though they matter most. If it moved you, drop a comment and tell me the one line that stayed with you. I read every single one. If you know someone who's ever felt invisible at a job where they gave everything, share it with them. It might be the thing they needed to hear today. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe and stick around. There's another coming that I think you'll feel in your chest. See you in the next one.